On August 14, 2003, a transmission line fault in Ohio, caused by contact with a tree, cascaded into one of the largest outages in North American history, plunging more than 50 million people in 8 states and Ontario into darkness. In literally a matter of 5 or 6 seconds, the lights flickered and went out, recalled the chief operating officer of the New York grid. 6 seconds. One tree. 55 million people! The United States power grid is considered the world's largest machine, moving power across vast distances through a complex network operated by thousands of organizations. And that is just one country's portion of a system that spans every inhabited continent on Earth. To understand why this machine is so extraordinary and so fragile, you need to go back to the beginning. To a war so strange that its casualties included a circus elephant named Topsy. In the 1880s, Thomas Edison built the world's first electrical power system, direct current, DC, generating electricity at a central plant and pushing it out through copper wires to the buildings around it. It worked magnificently, within a radius of about 1 mile. Beyond that, DC voltage dropped so catastrophically that it became useless. Edison's grid could light a neighborhood. It could not light a city. Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse championed an alternative, alternating current, AC, in which the current constantly reverses direction. Using transformers, AC could be stepped up to enormous voltages for long-distance transmission, and stepped back down for safe use in homes and factories. The physics allowed it to travel not 1 mile, but 100, 1,000. Edison fought back viciously. Animals were publicly electrocuted with AC current as a demonstration of its danger. When New York sought a more humane alternative to hanging, Edison recommended AC-powered electrocution. The chair ran on Tesla's current. It was deliberate. But in 1893, Westinghouse won the contract to illuminate the world's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, and the expo became a dazzling showcase for AC. The following year, Westinghouse began delivering electricity from Niagara Falls to Buffalo, New York, 26 miles away. The War of the Currents was over. AC had won, and the architecture of the grid it built, generators, transformers, transmission lines, local distribution, is essentially the architecture that still runs the world today. Here is the thing about the grid that most people never grasp. It is not a storage system. It is a live wire. Every generator connected to a grid, coal plant, nuclear reactor, gas turbine, hydroelectric dam, must spin at precisely the same frequency. In North America, that frequency is 60 Hz. In Europe and most of the rest of the world, 50 Hz. 60 oscillations per second, or 50, every second, everywhere, simultaneously without interruption. Think of it as the world's most critical orchestra. Every musician must play at exactly the same tempo. If one player speeds up or slows down, even slightly, the dissonance doesn't just sound wrong. When loads suddenly increase, generators slow down slightly, giving up some of their mechanical energy of rotation. When loads decrease, generators speed up. This self-regulating phenomenon must be maintained across thousands of generators, millions of kilometers of lines, and more than 1 billion electrical loads simultaneously. If the frequency drifts too far, if the orchestra falls out of time, generators begin to disconnect themselves to prevent damage. Those disconnections send power surging onto other lines, which overload, which trip further generators, which cascade into a blackout in seconds. This is what happened in 2003. The root cause was a software bug in the alarm system at First Energy's control room in Ohio, which rendered operators unaware that transmission lines were overloading. At 4:05 p.m., the system shut down, triggering a cascade that forced the shutdown of at least 265 power plants. New York City went dark in 6 seconds. The economic cost exceeded $10 billion. The grid that made all of this possible is staggering in scale. The Eastern Interconnection alone, just the eastern half of North America, consists of thousands of generators, millions of kilometers of transmission and distribution lines, and more than 1 billion different electrical loads. It is, by any reasonable measure, the most complex machine ever assembled by human beings. And it was built in pieces by competing companies over a century, with no single plan, no single owner, and no single point of control. Now consider what that machine is carrying today. and what is being asked of it. In the United States, 70% of power transformers are over 25 years old. 60% of circuit breakers are over 30 years old. 70% of transmission lines are over 25 years old. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave the U.S. energy infrastructure a grade of D+, barely passing in 2025. The investment gap to fix it? $578 billion, with electricity peak demand at its highest point in 2 decades. Into this aging infrastructure, the world is now injecting 2 new, massive, simultaneous demands. The first is the clean energy transition. Solar panels and wind turbines generate electricity intermittently, when the sun shines, when the wind blows. Unlike a coal plant or a nuclear reactor, they provide no inertia, no physical flywheel spinning at grid frequency to absorb sudden changes in demand. Unlike synchronous generators, renewable energy sources, especially solar and wind, connect to the grid through power electronic inverters. Inverters do not inherently provide inertia. This lack of inertia can lead to faster and larger frequency deviations when imbalances occur. The clean energy revolution is, paradoxically, destabilizing the system it is designed to save. The second demand is artificial intelligence. Global electricity consumption from data centers reached approximately 415 terawatt-hours in 2024, roughly 1.5% of total global consumption, growing at 12% per year. The IEA projects this to nearly double to 945 terawatt-hours by 2030. In 2023, data centers consumed 26% of the total electricity supply in Virginia alone. One state, 1/4 of all electricity, consumed by server farms. In 2024, a large-scale disconnection event occurred in Virginia's Data Center Alley, where a protection system failure caused 60 out of more than 200 data centers to suddenly disconnect from the grid and transition to on-site generators. The abrupt loss of load introduced a significant power imbalance that compelled the utility to rapidly curtail generation. 60 data centers, one instant, a grid emergency that nobody heard about. And then there are the threat actors watching all of this. Russia, North Korea, Iran, and China currently have the capability to launch cyberattacks that could result in catastrophic, widespread, lengthy blackouts. The nation's power providers reported 185 instances of mostly physical attacks or threats against critical grid infrastructure in 2023, doubling the number from 2021. Physical attacks against power lines in America, doubling every 2 years. The grid the world needs for the next century is not the grid the world has, and the gap between the two is the most important infrastructure problem almost nobody is talking about. The cost of large power transformers has risen 60 to 80% since 2020. These are the components that step voltage up for transmission and back down for distribution. When they fail, they cannot be quickly replaced. The largest ones weigh hundreds of tons and have delivery lead times measured in years. In 2014, the average age of large power transformers in North America was already 38 to 40 years, at or beyond their design lifetime. The situation has not improved. Solutions exist, but they require scale that has not yet been mobilized. Grid-scale battery storage can provide the synthetic inertia that renewable energy lacks. High-voltage direct current transmission, HVDC, can move power over thousands of kilometers with minimal loss, connecting renewable-rich regions to demand centers. Microgrids, islands of local generation and storage, can maintain power locally even when the wider grid fails. The clean energy transition, if done right, does not just replace fossil fuels. It builds a smarter, more resilient network, distributed, digital, responsive in milliseconds. Some regions, notably Denmark, Germany, and parts of Texas, are already demonstrating what this looks like at scale, but the window is narrow. The American Society of Civil Engineers estimates this represents a $5 trillion problem, with 70% of power transformers over 25 years old, and demand growing faster than at any point in 2 decades. Every year of delay is compounded interest on a debt that will eventually be collected by a blackout or a cascade failure Or a cyberattack that finds the weakest link in a machine that has no weak links to spare. Right now, somewhere in the world, a grid operator is watching a frequency meter. It reads 49.998 Hertz, 2 thousandths below nominal. A generator somewhere just tripped unexpectedly. A large factory just came online. A cloud passed over a solar farm. The operator has seconds. They redirect power from a reserve plant. The frequency climbs back. The crisis passes, unannounced, unknown to the billion people whose lights just stayed on. This happens thousands of times a day, on every continent, in every weather, through every disaster. The largest machine ever built by humanity is also the most invisible. You only notice it when it stops.